get my loops working here, just so I can easily talk to you guys. But also I want to kind of get the recording going easily too. Okay, let's looping audio. So if I start, maybe looping audio. If I start, maybe back. Honestly, make this as easy as possible. Okay, there's still a bit of echo there, so I'm going to figure out where that's coming from. So look, and this is the easiest way to do it, but I'm just trying to really make sure. Okay, it's really quiet in the background, that loop, so I'm not sure if it'll be the biggest issue, but I would like to resolve it, because I'm sure you guys will get annoyed by it, and I'll definitely get annoyed by it. Okay, so how's that now? Okay, so how's that now? Okay, well, thanks for talking back to me, Tim. That's really helpful. And I'm kind of yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's still quiet in the background. Why is that happening though? That shouldn't loop back. Maybe this one's looping back here. Maybe my desktop audio or something. There you go. One of those isn't muted. Desktop audio. How about now? Oh no! Why is that happening? Okay, this is a little bit interesting, isn't it? Because I haven't really... I can't see anything that should be looping that audio. But what if I just bring my volume down? How's that? I guess that doesn't really tell me. What about now? What about now? So it is recording even if there isn't that. So this is something internal. So this is because I'm using some softwares that are just brand new to me. And possibly this headset issues. I don't know. I doubt it's headset. This seems like a technical issue. Ah, here we go. I've got this open. Muted. Okay, here we go. Hello guys. There we go. Thank you. I just this is because I had my Twitch open in the background, so you can see this is where the looping and feedbacking is coming from. But that's resolved. Cool. Okay, I just wanted to have this open to make sure you guys aren't missing out on something that I'm recording. You can see here, if I look at these windows, then it doesn't really help us to see anything, but I just wanted to check they were all up and going. Here we go. Okay, we've got it started. Now I can actually introduce maybe some music to my workflow or something. I'm sure this is technically not what I'm supposed to do, but I'm just gonna listen to some of my own music. If you guys happen to benefit from that music, I think that's fair. Let's start with some Lana, eh? Oh, okay. My wife wants to listen to it. That's fair. She can take that. She's the one that's driving around and doing work and things. I'm the one that's having fun at home. Let's bring out some YouTube stuff then. We share our one. So let's go for. Yeah, look, I'm hoping to get a webcam soon, so hopefully this will all just look a little bit smoother when I can get that going. But at the moment, I'm going to try and use a combination of my phone uploading little videos and things, which I might upload to my Discord. Of course, you can see this is where I'm just storing a lot of my files. But yeah, another day of not sleeping that good, so like, I guess we'll just take it easy today in some ways. But you know, I want to be creatively stimulated still, because um, I can easily get into too much of like a funk of sitting around doing nothing for a day, which you know is me. Like other people get good relaxation from that. But you can see this is some of the projects I've been working on lately. Um, and you can see this is a pretty new Discord channel too, just me and my brother in it so far. Um, you're more than welcome to join if that's what suits you. I'll throw an invite into it, and look, if you don't feel like chatting much in the Twitch, that's totally fair because a lot of people don't engage that way. But if you felt like engaging in a different sort of way with me via text or something like that, then that's how you could do it. Was just reaching out to me over my Discord or whatever. Um, if you felt like doing that, then cool, but you really don't have to. Um, and in fact, I'm going to even go back over here and just scroll downwards so we don't end up with that looping. Because this is really, I just want to pop this open just for a quick like chat window. If I pop this one open, it's easy enough to, I need to go out of edit mode though, whatever. Out of edit, studio mode. That's kind of what I'm after. Once it loads. Yeah, it doesn't really want to go to studio mode. That's fine. We don't actually need this to be doing anything. Let's go back to editor. The stream seems to be working fine, that's the main thing, and if I wait here for a second, I can tell it's working fine because you can see the movements are still happening and those loops start happening when I get there. I can pop away the chat window. Can I pop away this whole window? Nope. I'm sure there's ways I can set that up, so I might do that at some point. In the moment, I'm pretty keen to just chill and not focus too much on those real admin-y type ones. And I'm just going to have a scroll through. There you go, just so for people to be familiar with some of my work before I keep going with what I'm currently doing. This is the fun little one from last night. So I put that up for free as well for anyone that like wants to print this. Like everything that I print is for free on my cults. I'm thinking about maybe adding a base to that so that it doesn't flip around, but it's honestly, I went for very simple, and it is very simple. So I'll just throw in my cults for anyone that wants to. Oh, that's in the music. I thought there was a shuffle going on in my mic. So look, I'm going to be uploading some new creations like this, but just for the moment, let's go into my design section. You can just see what the current projects, and you can tell that these top ones up here are the ones that are really polished, and the ones that I'm using for promoting my Twitch and stuff. I've got a handful of views across these though, so I'm glad I'm getting some engagement. I want to go back to some of these old ones that seemed popular. You know, there's a couple with like 14 downloads or whatever, or these ones seem more popular anyway. The further down you get, partly because of their time on the platform, I think. the one that I'm really excited to see what happens with is really these horns. I think these are really cool. I just need to take a photo of myself wearing them because they've come out really nicely. And I might even use a profile picture with these horns in place or something, because I think I look like a bit like a satyr from my profile on the picture if I put these horns on. So that's pretty cool. Um, yeah, I'm the only one that's uploaded a make of them as well, because I was trying to get more of these photos up there in a digestible way. Um, and I especially wanted to get this one up here, which shows that texturing, and it already looked like bone before I took it off. Um, I haven't done any sort of work on it, and it just like basically looks like bone already, which I think is very cool. I'm using a wood PLA here, and it's coming out like bone really nicely. Um, yeah, I think just like that, I'd highly recommend using wood for both bone surfaces and actually wooden surfaces, but it can work for like kind of a few clay type things as well, depending on the texturing on the model that you're doing, because obviously I textured this model to look like bone, so that's where that's coming across. But if I'd wanted to texture it to look like wood, then the wood PLA would be really helping with that. So look, hey, feel free to engage with me on my Discord, or yeah, like I said, let's just link through to my profile. I don't want you guys to have to feel like you gotta remember links or find links or anything like that. But here's just, oh, this is my one, so we'll just go with my profile. So that's not going to help you guys, it'll link you to just your own creations. This is going to link you to mine. Cool to see we've got 2 viewers today at the same time. That's quite cool, because I've just been consistently averaging about 1 viewer at a time. So look, if you guys feel like engaging with each other, then cool. If you guys felt like following, then that's cool, but you don't have to, of course. I don't want to put pressure on people to feel like they've got to engage with us in any way that I say. Oh, see, so I know from putting my headphones on, that's way too loud. And that's not even my goal. This one's my goal. Maybe I can turn the notifications down here, alerts. What if we do not disturb on it? Then I can do this. Ah, okay, that's interesting. It cuts it off halfway through. That's pretty rubbish. I'll try one of these. It's too loud though, so look guys, I will definitely adjust those volumes, and I'm not going to try and spam annoying stuff like that. I'm not really here to advertise myself. I'm here to give you guys some free stuff. Like that lo-fi volume's crept up, hasn't it? Like I like it, but it just needs to be more lo-fi. I'm also noticing a bit of audio in that, which I find a little bit irritating myself. But oh, sorry, not audio. Sorry, lyrics. That's what I find a little bit difficult to study to sometimes, if they just come up intermittently and stuff like that, but sometimes I do like them, and it tends to be about whether I'm familiar with the lyrics or not as well. So look, here's some of the 3D models. If something stands out here and you're like, oh damn, you know, like a lot of people print these adjustable stone walls or stackable walls, but look, I think these are pretty rubbish now if I look back on them. I'm sure other people get use out of them, but look, I'm going to build a way better version of these soon, and it's in process actually. I'm starting with like a palisade wall section of it, so you might see that exploding palisades part of that section. And look, I can even bring it up. This is a bit of a project I'm doing for a friend of mine. I'm just going to save my sculpt where I am. I'm going to look. I'm even just going to start making it really clear that this is my Twitch stream 17th. And look at these sheer number of projects I've got. This is where like some file management's really going to help you. But yeah, I say a lot of stuff that I should be doing, but I don't necessarily do myself. But like, here's a couple ones for like people that are like interested in what I'm going to try to explore. Oh, there it is. So look, you know, like this is supposed to print something along those lines, but all I've done is a sandcastle mold there. I'm thinking about sandbox gaming in a sandbox. That's what I thought for maybe my first D&D session that I run on here. And we're just going to not bother saving any changes. Look, I've really lost myself here with the sheer number of projects, so I'm really going to have to start going back and organizing these to some extent. You can see there's a huge variety here though. Working on like some mixed reality chess, some AR templates and things. I like this. Like, I really want to show you the AR tactical spheres sometime once I can get those functional. Um, yeah, like just like some quite interesting, straightforward stuff. You can see how long I've been working on. It's already been a week at least of working on this Satyr sculpt. I think this is some of my first ones. I started on the 11th here. Um, I'm looking for stuff. See, I've got my main friend Jason, somebody that's collabing with me on these stuff, and I'm looking for Palisade. So I could just do a search here, but I'm just really trying to also highlight for you some of the other projects if they're of interest to you. I think Talons Remeshed is one that you guys might like the look of. I haven't launched these ones yet, but basically you can see that these are like kind of talons to print on your fingernails. And at the moment this will probably work. It depends on the curvature of your nail. My nails are a little bit flatter than this, so I'm going to have to remesh or boolean that for myself. My brother also has really wide nails, so I'm going to have to actually work on a different set for him. So that's where we were kind of running into some difficulties with fake nails, or drag nails. And look, I'm planning on amending those, but my thoughts are that you need at least a different, maybe the middle three fingers could be similar, but definitely your pinky and your thumb need to be completely different shapes for pretty much everyone's hands, right? The pinky can be basically the same shape, but just does need to be smaller, but the thumb is quite a significantly different shape, at least on my hand to the other ones, and the way it sits, it's definitely got more curvature from what I can see. So I think that the thumb one this might be a good thumb one. And maybe I'm looking at trying to widen them slightly, or like widen this curve across here. Maybe just looking to flatten slightly, cut across here a little bit, and then maybe have like just a more subtle curve going across here. Something really small and not really a big deal. Look, that's just one thing that I'm working on. I hope we can go back to that in one of these streams. But that's more of an art collab with my brother, so that's about if he's online and stuff, and he's wanting to collab with me. And then I'm also obviously going to ask everyone's permission before I try and stream anything with them. So that same goes with the D&D stuff, as I'd love to share my games. And especially because I'm working on a lot of props and things that'll be used. So don't worry guys, like even if you don't see directly into my D&D games, I'm going to be giving you huge insights through the media that I give you. And so what one was I looking at there? I had another one that I thought I'd show you briefly. Yeah, I'm working on some augmented reality assets, which I think are cool. Some little bowling ball pins and stuff sitting on the table. Oh yeah, I like these kind of football net things. Let's just show you these briefly. So these should print in place with zero supports if you've got enough adhesion going on, and then you've basically got like a net at the back that will take a little bit of the force from a little tiny kick of a football or whatever it is. But these are designed to be printed for playing on tabletop. Throw one down one end, one down the other end. I've got a couple of these lying around on my desk, so I can show you pictures of them if you like, but if I'm going to show you everything I do, there's just too much. There is just too much. And especially the organization level isn't quite there yet, so I'm just going to keep scrolling back. You can see I've got some poison dragon breaths or something, skull face walls, some haunted house stuff. I've been working on some Mother's Day stuff. There's my articulated mesh, and here we go. This is about where I was at. So I remember working on a tent for my friend, and a moon lamp for him. I do like my moon lamp, but I'm not going to go into that now. I'm getting a bit too lost in all my other projects now. I think these weighted nets are quite cool to probably show you guys. So let's go to the weighted net here, and just remember I'm at about the 26th of March, so I'll go back to the 26th. Like here's the bowler part, but look, if we just go Alt H, what have we got here? So we've got a few different parts. I was doing like a dangling net was part of it, and then basically all I've done is I've printed these balls, and I've printed this net, and I just printed these balls, and I just looped them in. You can see they've already got a cut in them. This net should print in place and stuff. And this is again all stuff I plan to upload. I just want to make sure it's printing well before I do. And I've got I'm happy with my little bowler net, but there was just a little bit too much cleanup on it, and I don't want you guys to have to do cleanup because I hate cleanup myself. I'm sure some of you guys don't mind it as much. My wife finds it kind of satisfying in some ways, but like I don't really like wasting time on cleanup, if you get me. Some other stuff I'm working on a thrice locked chest for anyone that likes the King Killer Chronicles series. That's a wonderful series of books. Very cool. And like I would be considering like listening to some audiobooks on here, but I want to be careful not to be infringing too much copyright and stuff. Um, Here's a little Ivysaur I worked on. This guy's already, I think, available online, or if he isn't, I will make him available online really soon. Because he's currently being painted. So once I've got a good make of him, that's probably when I don't think he is actually online, but once he's been painted, there's a little bit of this that's still a Bulbasaur from somebody else's model. I need to work on his feet just a little bit. So that's what I also want to do too, to just make sure that this is authentically just my model and not like the toes are currently somebody else's work. So I'm going to basically shave those off, build my own toes, and then there should be just literally no mesh here that remains from the other person's project. But I do want to go and highlight that I took this from cults, and I just looked up and actually let's find the actual one rather than the vague location. We might as well be linking him since I did use his work. There we go. So look at this one. You can see some similarities here between the two of them, but this is if you guys want a Bulbasaur, this is the best free Bulbasaur I could find, and I use that to kind of build off. Yeah, I like that one, but I just wanted to add, like, he's a bit 2D and stuff. I just wanted to add, or like at least his face is 2D. That's more like cookie cutter eyes and stuff, which definitely like suits the cartoon look. I was just going for maybe building a slightly more realistic looking one. So you can see I've kind of added some depth to his eyes. I do think the triangular nature to his eyes is essential for him still feeling like Ivysaur, so I haven't removed that completely. And you can see they're not quite rounded perfectly, but that's just trying to just experiment a little bit here in the way the paint would sit in. And I'm pretty happy with my experiments, and my wife's going to paint something beautiful out of it, I'm sure. But I think when I maybe want to export this model, I like it to be even more print ready or paint ready than it is, and there's a couple things I can do there in the eyes, maybe even giving like some stronger sort of crevices for that black paint or outliner to fall into or something like that. The other thing I noticed that printed poorly is its teeth. The teeth are just too small there, and they overhang with the lip too much. So the other thing I'm going to consider now that I'm more familiar with 3D printing is really, does it print from the bottom upwards? And if you see those teeth, they overhang. There's no way that they're going to print. They're printing on nothing. So you might have seen me annotating like this before and just doing some straight up lines like this across it. They can be really rough. But you see how you start running into issues here. If you're starting to build upwards, there's a bit here that's just going to not get printed. And it kind of, oh sorry, hang on. Here, that's not going to be printed, right? Those tips, that's not going to be printed. This chunk here, not going to be printed. I don't see many other issues with this. This does slightly lean upwards. I was having a little bit of issues around here, I think. So you can see these are the two issue areas where you start to end up with a little bit too much overhang. And definitely if you're dealing with an overhang that goes, past this 180 line. So, if you think about 180 degrees being flat, I guess there, then, even if you're dealing with something that's at like, 170, that can probably print in the right settings. Don't, like, if it goes too far, then it probably won't. You'll probably deal with some falling off around here. But that's kind of what I'm looking at. And if you see me breaking it down like this, this is the biggest problems I'm having with this printer here and here. I don't think I've been having other issues, but that's what I'd be looking for, is stuff like this, and going from the bottom upwards and going, is that going to be fine? Maybe I'm getting some issues at the tip here. It looks like the tip's probably painted poorly. And I just go through and highlight those areas, fix them up for another print. That's what I'll be doing sometime. And you know what? I'm just going to save this one as annotated. Because I've done some just annotations on that, which I like to remember for later. And I don't really want to load the version that doesn't have annotation, because this is the one that will tell me where my issues are at. And tell me why, because that little diagram there tells me exactly what I need to know. It's going a little bit over the 180 mark. Some of these are down here. Okay, I'm gonna have to switch gear for food soon because this is, it's not great for me to wake up and then not eat not eat food. Lots of stuff I'm working on. Lots of cool stuff. There's nets, and poop rollers or something. I'm trying to make a gun maybe that shoots that little net. I thought that would be cool. This is where naming really helps, doesn't it? So let's actually just go. Now that I haven't found it, let's go. Okay, see it's not in that folder. It's not in my blends folder. Which tells me that I'm not going to actually find it easily right now. So I'm not going to bother finding that on my stream, but I'm working on Palisade wall collection. Maybe even if I open wall, Skullface wall. What about fortress? Now look, I'm not sure where I've put that file. I'm sure it must be. Maybe if I look under my friend's name. See, look at that. I don't think I've really got anything for him. I've got some social links for him, and since I'm talking about him, he doesn't really have any uploads and that sort of thing. But look, if you do see something of his that you like the look of, then I'm definitely going to be sharing stuff with him. So I can actually just very briefly. He hasn't. Oh, you know what? I need to talk to him about what stage that's at before I start sharing it with people. But we've got a like he's pretty much constructed himself. He's pretty talented himself, and so he's done some very interesting modeling on like an artificer artillerist, I think, which does a shoot over the shoulder cannon. He's printed the over-the-shoulder cannon version, but they've got a variant which is kind of like a little turret that pops up and walks around type thing. And so he's modeled a very cool one of those, and he just needed a little bit of help getting that through to its final printing stages, and so I jumped in and helped with that. And wow, like very minimal effort on my part, so I'm glad I could offer my help. But like I managed to look at the issues he was having, quickly resolve them, and get it printing. And look, it's way sturdier than I thought it was going to be. It's got something with a bit of thin legs on it, and I was like a little concerned about that, and that was where he ran into issues. I put like a very slight extrude over just that region, and just built it up very slightly, and I think I checked a solidify modifier over the whole thing, quickly remeshed it, and then I think all of those issues were resolved. So that's quite easy. I'm planning on, you might have seen there, I'm working on like maybe a mesh fixing sort of plugin or whatever, or like a blend file where you can just load in a mesh, like maybe like this or whatever, which does have one or two issues, and it either like highlights those issues for you or just starts removing those areas. And if it deletes those areas, then you know it's not going to print those areas properly when you bring it through. And you can bring it out into a different software and do that, Flash, print and stuff. But a lot of people aren't so familiar with the like layers of that. So if I go like say this guy, let's go ahead and just I'm not going to share him all the way with you guys right now because he's not done. But I'm just going to show you a little bit of that exporting process here while we've got him, and he's definitely one that's going to be he's going to have issues when I print him, right? Like I know I've had issues printing his teeth, so let's see if this shows up. These issues show up in the 3D software right there, like this. Oh yeah, you can see some of these I've organized into different locations. I do like, yeah, 'cause this one's not so much a remix anymore, so I might start my own folder that's back towards that. Let's see, 3D printing main. It's always 3D printing main. There we go. And look, you can see this is my main folder for storing stuff, and even this is getting out of hand. So this is where I do kind of just start needing to digitize some stuff and share some stuff with you guys. Oh, here we go. So let's actually, I found where I've stored some of this stuff. So I've got a whole folder that's got his blends in it and stuff, I guess, from the looks of it. Yeah, so here's that's some of the STL files, but it looks like D&D minis, 3D printing. One of these will hopefully have that in it anyway. So look, I was going here to find a save location for my Pokemon. We've got Pokemon remixes, Pokemon stuff. So let's actually drag and drop the Pokemon remixes into Pokemon stuff. Or not, I'll do that later. And some stuff there is not Pokemon, but let's go for planters, because this one's going to be a planter. It is actually like more of a pencil holder at the moment. Let's go ahead and export that. See, there's a bit of load time there. He's probably a bit higher poly than I need him to be. So I could be running into some issues with that too, or at least like in length of print time and that sort of stuff. I hope you guys are enjoying the lo-fi vibes of today. Not sure who's still on. Let's see. 2 viewers still. Yeah, good work, guys. Glad you stuck out the first half hour. If that is the same viewers, if it's new viewers, welcome. Look, I'm throwing some free stuff into that Twitch channel, and mostly at the moment I'm doing some kind of admin-y sort of stuff. You might have seen me fiddling around earlier today trying to just get my Twitch and Streamlabs connection working, and that's working now. One of the ones I want to resolve today is trying to get this working on my phone, because I haven't set up my webcam yet, and I know that webcams are important to people. You can see even there I've got a webcam slot. I should fix that, so I'm going to go back to my Twitch studio, and I'm going to, at the moment I've got it on the gameplay. I'm going to call this gameplay, I'm going to call this webcam work. Okay, so if I want to use the webcam, I'm going to be using that one, because then it's, oh, actually let's go, web, and webcam and work. Cool, that's just easy. Webcam and PC. That's probably even more specific, because I am talking about including some stuff here that is, and look, I don't even have a webcam now, so it's quite easy for me to go back to gameplay. And I'm going to edit this, and I'm going to say this is what I'll do when I go full screen. Go. And now I know I'm on full screen gaming because I don't have a webcam. So there's a few things like that I'm kind of doing. You can see, like, even if you just go on my Twitch, a couple of these will lead you through to some interesting stuff. If you find that interesting, you can see what kind of work I was doing back in 2018 if you want. You know, maybe we just take a pause from this. Yeah, this is what I used to do, guys. This is as far back as 2013, this like short film teaser. So that's only about half of the teaser there, but this is just to show kind of overall what I was doing too, because I was doing quite a range, but it was largely focused on real estate stuff at the time. But I wanted to show them that I wasn't just this, hey, here to shoot some photos or whatever. I've got some really professional standards I'm bringing too. These are my grandparents. When I was mucking around with a stable cam. You can see a lot of these are just like simple shots, but this was just to advertise for me nice and quickly back in the day when I was running this real videos. I guess there you go. Look, I was mucking around with like at least some 2D design back then in animation, which has kind of led to where I am now. Anything else that's actually interesting? I like these ones. Spent a while on these just for like showreel type stuff. I haven't exported their high quality ones yet, but I do plan to at some point. There's some kind of weird stuff in here, eh? I guess the one that's kind of fun is going through to my playlists. You can see this is some stuff I worked for a friend. You know, he did some work for drag queens and stuff, and these are all his 2D arts and stuff, including the background. and I just threw that together for a quick animation. Not my skull, but my animation. This should be all mine, but it's like, you can see it's a bit clunky. But this is my character Koff, and he likes to plant little gravestones to grow his undead from. This is a flying castle from our very early campaign. Yeah, you can see it again. I just really, it actually 3D prints. I just tried to do an animation to show off the 3D print. Oh yeah, here's Koff again, maybe with a background, I guess. And this is the character Mushy. Oh look, yeah, I need to sort through some of these videos clearly, because we've got a bit too much of Koff. But look at that, yeah, that one's the better one, I think, where he actually manages to plant one of these, and a few of them come out of the ground. Sketchy Queens mock-up. We'll be back to the beginning. Let's just see. I'll see if it plays through again to another one. This might just be an alternate version I've got, which is pretty similar. Yeah, here we go, because I've got this. This guy's just to demonstrate one of the assets you might see on my cults is I remeshed somebody else's changeling. Looks like I've put that in, yeah, like some sort of HDR, and spun around in circles. Yeah, I was having fun with some spooky skulls and just, yeah, mucking around with my brother's character. Oh yeah, here's those interlocking things. They do work. A random there's the hand monster that you might have seen. This is some, yeah, texture modifying stuff. All of this stuff is like a lot of procedural work now. So a lot of this stuff I can create many different things from. I've actually done a lot more work on this procedural dungeon too, if anyone's curious. It pops up with little barrels and random locations and things now. But you can see that's already generated a bunch of crazy maps. Some of them work, some of them don't work. The new generator I'm working on works better for like creating that sort of format. Collab with me and the wife. Another collab between me and the wife. She likes this one a lot, but it's short. See, I'm doing a lot of short videos. I'm kind of preparing for you know, the shorter generation of attention. Some of this is a bit of After Effects work here too. You can see that's After Effects and Illustrator. Working with I guess time lapses and clocks and stuff. This is a procedural clock generator I made. Background map for like a video game I was working on. Oh yeah, just an animation of a 2D image. Yeah, we are back to this one, for those that remember it. Another version of this one. I like that one better actually. Yeah, back to the mechanical heart that we saw before. This guy I like, Spot. So you can see I've been trying to work on it's funny, I brought this guy to my D&D campaign. What did the party do? Run the opposite direction of him. I think they're too scared of him, despite his like cartoonishness. But I'm working on getting that into a seamless loop at some point. But I really like him. That's one of my favorite ones. I might even 3D print him because I had a lot of fun with him. Just a simple design. You go. That's just a little bit of what I get up to on the old animation side, I guess. Let me just pop that open. You guys, yeah, you guys still having fun? I hope you are. I'm gonna have to be feeding myself a bit and things. That probably would have been a good time while I was showing you through that channel. But maybe we can do something with that. Maybe let's go. Hopefully it doesn't roll on to like random shit that's not me. Like, just for those curious, let's just throw up like some of these. Might not be really interesting to some people, but here's some just some video editing stuff that I've done. Oh yeah, there we go. No, this is not playing my stuff at all, is it? That's what I was worried about. No mouse video editing. I don't want it to be view full playlist. There we go. Like here's some of these old videos that I worked on. I used to work in news as well, so just maybe trigger warning on this one for earthquakes and stuff. Oh yeah, this is kind of annoying. I got my work to send me this stuff, but some of the audio's been stripped of it. Yeah, so look, this is stuff I've cut. It might be jumping around a little bit, so look, feel free to just let me know. I'd rather know that I'm doing something boring rather than you guys just tune out. But this is just giving some background on me as and like the work that I do, I guess. So look, I'm gonna leave this rolling for a second for anyone curious, and if you're bored, just tune out. I'll be back to like modeling quite soon. Yeah, so I guess for any Kiwis watching, this is Mike McRoberts here. He's one of our relatively famous TV presenters. Really nice guy. Oh yeah, these poor people, This is very emotional for us both to work on, I know. And uh, Mike McRoberts has always been very passionate about informing people about what's going on in the Middle East and stuff, yeah. So he actually kind of just let me cut this whole thing, and then he came through, and he wanted, I think, one or two changes. So I think we repositioned this shot and the other shot there with the boy, partly because of the timing with news, because the boy's the nicer shot to end on, but there's sometimes a bit of overlap. Yeah. Michael Meyer as well, for anyone that is familiar with NZ presenters and News Hub or whatever. This might seem like self-promotion too, but it's actually good for me to go review this stuff and just see what content I've got available. I work quite broadly, and some of my work involves many different media platforms. Yeah, so I remember his audio and visual being really bad on this, so we had to spend a bit of time color correcting that. If I had a bit more time too, I'd have liked to polish some of those shots, but news is very much a speed's the name of the game, not quality. They just want to churn out stuff, and sometimes they'll give editors only 10 minutes or 15 minutes to cut a whole story that they've been working on the whole day. Um, yeah, Nick's a really nice guy though. We got on well with him. I don't recognise that reporter's voice. Yeah, look at this. I think this is so funny. Hey, look, I'm glad that you guys are still like sort of engaging with this. Hope it is relevant or feels relevant still. Just yeah, explaining this is part of my overall like I guess professional network and stuff, and it's advertising myself. And video editing's a big part of that. Um, Lots of my 3D knowledge comes from video editing or animating skills that I bring forward to like a bit more of a practical, printable way, and a I guess more short-term way. Yeah, Alexa Cook, yeah. I've cut so many of these like you know, like I guess petty theft ones. They blur together. Oh, I like this one. Let's full screen this one. So you can see some of this is HD too, which is nice. Unfortunately, that shot was a bit of a jump cut, but they didn't get enough setup shots for me to work with. I'm kind of having to work with only a couple of setup shots of this guy, even though they all look really nice. I wanted a bit more variety than what they gave me. The camera operator's obviously done a fantastic job here, though. There's some beautiful shots. These needed very little color correction, and they were already looking pretty spot on. Um, yeah, this is much higher quality filming than you typically expect from a from a news story, because they usually don't have much time at all. Yeah. These are the limited shots really here. Yeah, because you didn't know if that was the house or not. Yes, I think this is the only stuff that Michael came in and changed, was that he needed a bit more blurring on some of these graves just to be safe. Um, see that whole side's blurred just on the off chance you could read it. So obviously making sure you take the tone very seriously here. It's a very serious story. Um, but we also have got to be careful around anonymity of the suspect and stuff like that. So there's some legal stuff too. Yeah. So it looks like he cut off. He must have cut to a live one there. Normally they'll do a sign off unless they're going straight to something live. News Hub's recently gone down, so I wonder if this will get some interest just because News Hub's closing in a month or two. Oh, I'm not happy with my audio mixing there. This one must have been a rush. Maybe a fast one or maybe a lazy one. depending on the day I was on or if I was in a bad mood, maybe. This is a job that I got a lot of experience from, but I don't particularly miss. It was very high stress, and the editing department I don't think were treated particularly well, in my opinion. But again, not to say any of these reporters were treating me badly. The reporters were all really good and good to engage with. I had some more run-ins with the production side, and I guess more people in charge of the overall workflow and the way we received it. Well, this is cool. Yeah, I wanted to be able to use that shot a couple times or similar shots if we could, because obviously a rubbish story can be kind of dull. Oh yeah, so look at this. There's a bit of like fear mongering, isn't it? It's like in this specific situation, this thing will definitely happen, and it will happen. Yeah, Perry's fun. I saw him on the news after the News Hub announcement, and he was pretty upbeat for it. He's a pretty upbeat guy. Oh, I think this is actually really important. This one was like, I felt like this needed more information around it, so I was actually quite happy to work on this one. No, happy might be the wrong word. There's a certain desensitivity that comes from working in news, I guess, like where I'm constantly blurring, or was constantly blurring dead bodies, or like natural disasters, or covering murders, or whatever the most horrific shit is that we can throw on the screen, I guess. So there's some desensitization that comes to that, similar to if you play a lot of violent video games or have a dark sense of humor. Sometimes it just keeps bleeding further. Anyway, I'm supposed to be feeding myself, so enjoy. There we go. I don't know if anyone likes rices. I'm having some rices. You hear them crackling. I love how they crackle in the milk, and then you just gotta eat them quickly. Oh, yep, there we are, back to that one. Yeah, that just gives you an idea of what I used to do and do now. This is stuff that I've been doing for fun for a while, and now I want to make money off if I can, but I don't have to, obviously. Um, they've kind of let me go. There's a combination of kind of them not allowing me to work remotely, but me also having some mental health stuff and things that I was going through. They made no accommodations for me, which I'm a bit frustrated about, but I don't really have legal grounds to do anything about, so I'm not going to be, I guess, talking in depth about that, because it's like, they're a news company, they can probably shoot back at me pretty hard. So get back to what we were doing here, I guess, while I'm up around with breakfast. You remember I exported this a second ago? I guess just on the export side. That's probably one thing that a lot of people struggle with. I know I did. I really recommend looking at your preferences, go into the add-ons, type it in print. learning 3D printing, or even like if you've got any sort of function, type into the add-on, see if they've already got one, or do a quick Google. They probably will. GitHub's a great place to get add-ons to. Very simple. Utilities for 3D printing. It does what it says it does. Tells me where it is in the 3D viewport. It's in the sidebar here. And look, it's called 3D print. So it's really easy, isn't it? I've got another couple ones. I've got an IB generator here. Make human, real snow. There's some cool ones that I might explore sometime. Just do an add snow on this guy really quickly, see if that will do anything. Wouldn't be surprised if it breaks the whole system. Yeah, this is more supposed to be for like landscape and stuff, I guess, or like lower poly models. Hey, Kevin. Hey. Yeah, look, I'm going to switch it up and do some dishes anyway. I want my wife to come home and be happy, not sad in the kitchen. She hasn't really asked me to do anything, but just doing a little bit of bonus house work makes sense. And I think especially like, to tell her a little bit about this as well. I mean, I like to think of myself as a feminist, I guess, because I'm not somebody that views feminism as men being less than women, but more they're just being amazing things about both genders, and we might as well be exploring those good aspects rather than just highlighting the negatives or the differences or that sort of stuff. But generally speaking, I think one of the big differences, I guess, between yeah, I guess I think just like the between the dynamics between women and men, how they interact, often comes place in the marriage and things. And responsibilities with that is a Charlotte somebody song called Work. Charlotte Wilson or something like that. Anyway, that I'm sure she means something completely different by it, but I keep hearing it as like um, there's some work that needs to be. Oh, actually, I guess better example to talk about is, I don't know if you guys have heard the song Paris from Paris Paloma and things that's going around. Labour. I like to play that um, while I do a little bit of dishes anyway, because it reminds me that like I guess in a different relationship, in a different dynamic. See that crashed my blender, but that's fine. Um, yeah, in a different relationship, in a different dynamic, she'd probably just be doing way more work than me in this relationship, and it would be not very fair on her, and then that would be society's expectations or whatever, would be that, well, she just does that work. Um, and I know there's similar disparities for men, so I'm not talking about those just right now, but I really like to make sure that I'm doing a bit of extra labor and things around the house. And this song I play sometimes, um, and I'll let's do the music video too, because this is a pretty cool music video. Um, but this is what I think when I do dishes, so I'm just gonna play this one. repeat the same song over and over again. But Paris Paloma an hour. Okay, why not? Cool, still got some viewers, that's cool. Look guys, I'm going to turn that Paris Paloma down to quiet in the background. Yeah, look, I love this song. Listen to it on repeat. So you might end up with a few of these songs in your head too. I'm just running through and I'm just grabbing a bunch of the rubbish and stuff we got around the place. And so much of it is 3D printing related, right? Like, oh my goodness. I'm just trying to gather up the prints that I want to keep versus the ones that I don't want to keep. I'm looking forward to being able to document more of this side too in a second once I get my phone set up. My phone is set up for streaming. Or I get my webcam, I guess. You know, maybe I'll get my webcam soon if I'm lucky. Once I have all of those, it's like going to be significantly easier to show you guys what I do. I guess off the computer, because there's obviously 3D printing takes place in a physical space too. So I'm aware that you guys are missing out on half of the stuff at the moment. But I thought, like, one quick way that I could fix that is to, yeah, I guess like have some entertaining stuff on the screen for you. And I'm just going to keep talking over the top of it. In fact, look, I'm going to turn this music off because I imagine that you guys might even want to like tune into your own songs on the other side. I like this music, but if you wanted to listen to this, you can actually just, follow this link or whatever. Yeah, and this way you don't have to listen to music that I'm listening to. You can listen to your own music as well. Let's keep it like that because that's a bit more fair to other viewers. I don't expect you guys to overlap with all my interests. There's obviously going to be some things that are just straight up boring. But let's see. I've got some tangled colours here. Oh, yep. This is a classic. You get your headphones over with your computer. I'm just going to be really clearing some space in here. So I'm going to clear out my computer chair, clear out some space for the dishes and things. This looks like it's not just some small scale tidy I need to do in here. This is actually quite big scale, so I do hope I can document some of this for you guys too, because I guess it might help you organize your spaces for 3D printing. Later today or tomorrow, I'm planning on converting our whole study into a 3D printing setup. At the moment, it's more of like a art studio / guest room. But my wife's given me permission to like kind of grab half the room for myself over there. So I'm planning on doing that over the course of today if I can. Really hope that I get some more medicine to sleep though if I can, because that would make my life a bit better. the trouble. I put something really interesting on the screen, but there is some incredibly impressive stuff that they're just like, you know, that open source software just gives us for free. It's a pretty cool time to be living in. I mean, obviously, like a lot of this stuff's going to take certain levels of skill and stuff, but it's amazing how much of the stuff's pre-built into Blender. You've got some pretty cool looking stuff straight away. Look at that lighting, it's beautiful. It's really feels like, I guess like it feels to scale. That's what it will be. So like, I think really interesting about that line. Look at it, like really that difference. Oh my goodness. Okay, I do need to look more into some of this sort of stuff in my presentation and things. You know, I'm taking a bit of a focus on the 3D printing side to start with here because that's a bit more foundational skills. I've kind of got some of these skills or knowledge of these skills from animation and video editing. But oh my goodness, the implementation of that, beautiful. Obviously, it's not, yeah, like, but just some of these lighting sort of texturing effects that they're doing are very interesting. You know, like shaders, I guess. You know, like all the shaders. Shaders are quite interesting. It's basically about manipulating the way that the light interacts with it and stuff. But you're talking about, you know, dealing with physical light particles in a digital space or whatever, and they're physically being represented, or like they're digitally being represented to represent. Sorry, they're trying to digitally represent a physical phenomenon that's so complex that they can't actually go into that level of detail, right? You're talking about atoms and stuff. They're calculating all the atoms on the screen, or all the light particles on the screen. It's going to break everything. So they've got to do some kind of faking of those physical properties, and I think shaders do some very interesting stuff that I guess a couple of years ago I wouldn't have even known was possible or thought was possible with these sort of softwares. You might have seen some of my rigging I used, that Rigify is really handy. Yeah, look, I can show you more animation stuff at some point, but yeah, look, that Rigify stuff's huge. That's what I was using for this pan sculpt. But look, these got some really cool looking stuff here. And of course I expected, this is the highlights reel, I expected some stuff here that I wasn't capable of. But this is still, some of this has surprised me or given me new ideas already. Some weight painting there, it looks like. Oh, I really don't even know what we're talking about here. Very complex graph editing and animation graph editor. You know, I'm familiar with some of that stuff, but like I guess the way that they're manipulating it and the level of detail and complexity to the animation, I wouldn't be able to read that without having access to the source files too and stuff. Look, yeah, that's definitely like a lot of very interesting rigging going on, and weight painting and such. So I know a bit more about rigging. Weight painting is something I'm going to have to learn a little bit as I go. Texture painting, something that's like, I guess people have shown some interest in. I've got a rudimentary understanding of texture painting, but I use it with a combination of, I guess, a lot of my other visual skills and 3D skills, and I think that once you get enough of the package, you can kind of start filling in some of these gaps, and certainly that's what I like about Blender, is it's so intuitive that once you start feeling like you get the handle of it, you can actually do a lot of stuff in here without having to think twice. something different from what I am, because I'm not just doing tutorials here for you guys. Very happy to do more tutorial focused ones. This is more of a day in the life type one. And part of my day in the life is just seeing what new features come out for Blender or like other software, you know? Just keeping in the loop. Good to hear about it. Yeah, Max is just going to go find out what I can do with storage for this bed situation in a second as well. So I'll be back in a few minutes, hopefully before this video is over. Remember to mute myself as well.
In this video, I talk a lot about attributes, and everything still applies, except for one crucial part. The transfer attribute node doesn't exist anymore. Instead of that, you have to use the sample index node with the sample nearest node. It works the same, but it was split into multiple nodes. So yes, I do know about this, and you can stop commenting about it, or at least look at the pinned comment first. I used this huge setup to get this effect of bundled cables, and now it can be done way easier with the duplicate elements node. Just use it to duplicate your spline, and when you go to displace it with a noise texture, use the duplicate index to change the W value. And that's pretty much it. It's a tiny setup now. In this one, I show how to smooth out meshes, and again, I used this huge setup, but now it's as easy as using these nodes right here. It's way faster and easier, so definitely don't use the old setup. Plus, the blur attribute can be used for some other awesome things, like in this video by Erindale. When I made this ASCII art filter, I had to render out all of the characters I wanted to use to make a sprite sheet, and it worked fine, but geometry nodes makes it way easier and more customizable. It's the same idea where how light or dark the image is determines what characters to place, but with geometry nodes, you can use the string to curves node and swap out the characters on the fly or even change the font. This is the setup, and the gist of it is that I'm instancing onto a grid of points. What I'm placing on the points comes from this string to curves node, and by default it treats each character like an individual object, and we can choose the character with this index socket. But instead of choosing it manually, I'm using the value from an image or video, and it should work as long as you multiply the value of the image by how many characters you're using. I actually have a few effect filters that I made, like the glitch effect, paint filter, and this pixel sorting style filter, where I tried to use the shader editor, kind of like a compositor for post effects to use with already rendered videos. And now with the real-time compositor, these could be made much more conveniently because you can see the effect while you're working on your scene, and you only have to render it once. It might be a while though before this replaces my effects, since the compositor is still missing some things like procedural textures. Until then, we have to use video clips instead, but it is getting closer. For example, here is a CRT screen effect that I've been working on using the real-time compositor. As for my paint filter video, Alan Wyatt has made an incredible and much better paint filter using geometry nodes. Alan is a traditional artist also, and you can totally tell because it looks very close to the real thing. There's a link for this in the description. My recursive subdivision video is built around the idea of making a node group and then duplicating it a bunch of times, and we don't have to do that anymore because in Blender 4.0 we get repeat nodes. Basically, anything inside this zone will be repeated as many times as you specify, which would make a lot of things easier, like putting branches onto other branches, like in my lightning video, or you could make a plexus effect, or extrude something a bunch of times. My fuzz video was quickly toppled by the hair nodes introduced in geometry nodes. The way I did it before was by making a few hair shapes and then scattering them all over the model. Now you can select a model, press Shift A, and under curve we have this fur option, and that's all you need to make something fuzzy. To get the shape closer to my old result, I added a curl hair curves modifier before this interpolate one. You can find all these pre-made groups in the asset browser, and you can just drag and drop them onto an object in your scene. Anyway, with the curl node, I just increased the frequency to make it spiral more, made the radius smaller, and added a few subdivisions. You can turn up this number in the interpolate group to add more hair. And if you want the color to be inherited from the mesh, you can put this node setup at the end to copy the UV map from your object. Then in the shader editor, you can use the image responsible for the color and use an attribute node to give it the right UV map. This still only works with images, so if you're using procedural materials, then you'll have to bake them unless you want to make the node setup way more complicated. And to make baking easy, I've been using a free add-on called BakeLab. Now that simulation nodes are a thing, what I showed in these next videos is much easier to do. Like in my moving points video, there was a problem with the points occasionally teleporting really far away, but if you use this node setup with simulation nodes, then the result is much smoother and you only need a few nodes. In the sparkle video and the one about fire, I had to use the index node to make instances look like they're appearing over time, but with simulation nodes we can skip a lot of steps and use this setup to actually add points over time instead of faking it. And if you want to delete them after a while so they don't pile up, then you can track how old they are. You can do this with a store named attribute node. I'll name it age, then get a named attribute node, also called age, add one to it, and feed it into itself. For every frame that passes, the nodes in the simulation zone will repeat. So every frame, this age value will increase by 1 and add that attribute to the points as they spawn in. You can then use a delete node to delete points that are a certain age. So this right here is deleting points that have been around for more than 90 frames. That's the gist of how you would make a similar effect, but you can do all sorts of things with age, like scaling instances over time or changing color. The simulation nodes have a ton of potential, and if you want to learn more, check out this video on my second channel where I show all the things I've learned how to do with them so far. You can also check out the Mastering Simulation Nodes course by Arendelle to learn about things like voids and erosion. Links for everything will be in the description. So, is it a big deal knowing that a lot of the Blender videos you'll see might be outdated within a few months? I don't really think it's a big deal. I'd say that if the video is about geometry nodes, then try to find something recent, but even old videos will help you learn concepts. If the video isn't about geometry nodes, then you could probably watch something from like 3 years ago and still follow along without any issues. Just look for something from Blender 2.8 or newer. With that being said, what are some of the ways to stay aware of new features? Well, you can hear about new Blender versions by using a launcher like the .bow launcher. It tells you when new versions are released and lets you install multiple versions at once, including experimental branches. For new features, I like to check release notes on blender.org for an overview of what has been added, and they do a good job at making these pages engaging and clearly illustrating new features. For even more detail though, you can check release notes on the Blender wiki. I like to check this to see what's being added to alpha and beta versions. And if you don't like any of these options, you can always follow people on YouTube. There are always people making videos about new things being added, so a quick search should get you some good content. If you're the type of person that learns best when someone walks through things step by step, then check out my new second channel where I do exactly that. It's much more casual, where I do a lot of project-based videos and building things from scratch. As always, you can get the project files from my videos over on Patreon. Thanks for watching and have a good one.
Creating a donut in every version of Blender. It's a pretty simple idea, but I was kind of struggling to create this video for it. Originally, I wanted to start with the earliest version first, but the more I worked on it, the more I uncovered this surprising underlying story of Blender as a program that you can only really appreciate when we start from where we are today. Blender 4.0 released on November the 14th, 2023. And with that, we also got an updated version of the donut tutorial. I don't think we need the first beginner tutorial because I think it's more explaining the interface and stuff. I know that much, so we can probably skip that. And we get an ad. Nice. The basic modeling tools haven't changed that much in the last 4 years since I've started using Blender, and that's probably because they're already really good. Fun fact, this was the first donut I've ever created. I've never done the donut tutorial myself before, so I hope you like this one. Compared to 3.0, creating a donut is pretty much the same, but a few of the existing features got improved. One thing that they have added is actually the search function here in the add section. If you want to add a life, that doesn't exist in Blender, unfortunately, you have to find that yourself. But what exists is, for example, a torus. If we go to the modifier, this has also changed. You can just go in here and say, hey, I want to add a modifier. I'm looking for subdivision surface. There you go. The material principal BSDF looks different. From what I've seen, I think the principal BSDF is just more effective now, or more efficient, and is separated into these things, probably just to make it maybe easier to know which settings kind of are supposed to be used together. I'm not sure if I like the new principal BSDF just yet, but maybe I'll just have to get used to the new layout. The most exciting feature, for me at least, is probably the addition of node tools. You can basically use geometry nodes to create your own functions and automate whatever you want to automate. And the great thing is you can use these in edit mode and sculpt mode. There are of course a ton more improvements and changes, but for me at least this update feels more like a quality of life update to make walking in Blender just a lot quicker. It took what 3.0 brought and made it even better. Compared to 4.0, 3.0 is a monumental release for reasons we'll get into in a bit. So how do you actually model a donut in Blender?
Welcome to the wonderful world of 3D.
Creating a donut is pretty much the same as how most people know it. But this is the first big release that added geometry nodes. So instead of having to place each sprinkle on the donut manually or using particles, you can randomly sprinkle them with just a few nodes. How does that work again? Whoa. Okay, I've used that before. Why is it not like that? Well, if you know what you're doing. And you can not only reuse this sprinkle system, but also turn it into an asset for the brand new asset browser. A whole new way to pull assets from other blend files that make the process a lot more efficient and intuitive. And for anyone watching that started using Blender with 4.0 or later, this is what the principal BSDF looked like before. Now the last decision to make for your donut is whether you want to render it in cycles or in Eevee. Both have been added in version 3.0. Let me explain. In between every full version release, there are a bunch of smaller updates that improve new and old features or add entirely new ones, which then get finalized for a new full version release. And since there are so many updates that individually change only a few things here and there, I decided to only create a donut for every full version, and every update that happened after the last version is part of the next one. Version 4.0 released 2 years after 3.0. The time between 3.0 and 2.0 is a bit longer. Here are some of the things that have been added since 2.0. Eevee, cycles, a UI redesign, physics simulations, shape keys, sculpting, subsurface gathering, the grease pencil, dynamic paint, camera tracking, volumetrics, another UI redesign, VR support, render denoising, the compositor, motion blur, the UV editor, a search function, the outliner modifiers, a total recoding of the entire software, and most importantly, Suzanne. Basically, almost everything you now know and use in Blender over a time span of 21 years. So, what did Blender version 2.0 actually look like? Yeah. How does this work? Aha. Okay, so
Okay, looks like I've been muted a lot of this time, I guess. Um, that's interesting, but whatever. Yeah, so I'm just still running around doing some tidying, but fortunately got some clothes that my sister wants to donate from next door. So hopefully my wife will come home to some either fresh new clothing for herself or like something that she can either donate or try sell or whatever. So that should make for quite an interesting day today for you guys to be a part of, so that's kind of cool too. I'm going to try and keep online pretty much all day if I can. Yeah, pills for breakfast, pills for breakfast. Still waiting on this paycheck. Yeah, so it looks like I need to sort out some permissions on my phone so I can bring you guys over there. Um, but for the moment, this gives me lots of stuff to be able to show you. Want to talk to you about. Um, anyone has any discussion topics or whatever, I'm just gonna talk about 3D art and stuff. But if you guys want me to change gear, and I can talk about I can talk about D&D too. You know, that's nice. Talk about D&D. There's plenty of other topics I'd love to talk about. So I'm sure you can find something that you're engaging with. But I'm just gonna talk about my 3D art, a little bit of what I'm doing today. I'm gonna start. Whew, I'm overheating. You know, we're pretty warm over here considering we're getting out of summer. Yeah, look, today's gonna be an interesting day. I've got like, I guess, exercise-wise, I plan on doing a bit of yoga or going for a walk. So, depending on where we're at with the other stuff, we could do the most basic training yoga video ever, or probably more likely, I'll probably just chat to you guys while I do something like that, and just talk through some of the things that I find help for a creative brain or a working brain, I guess. And most of them are just like techniques that you guys probably find on any old yoga page, but just the ones I'll highlight the ones and why they've been helpful for me, I guess, if I do get to that point. But look, the day in the life, I think, is the key highlight I want to have for today's stream. So there might be some stuff that feels like really irrelevant to what I've said, but look, it's a day in the life, so I want to fill you in on what I'm doing. That's where I was really hoping for more of a cell phone sort of setup, so I can probably kind of tour you guys through my life a little bit. But for the moment, I don't have that, so it's kind of a day in the life, audio-wise and less visual-wise today. Which is probably good too, because the house is a mess, so you guys don't have to actually see the mess in the house. And hopefully I'll be able to just show you around when it's all tidy and clean and doesn't involve work. And then I can show you in more of a tour sort of fashion instead of a tidying fashion. Yeah, it's amazing how many of these minis, when I printed them, I was like, I've got to keep this one, right? Like, I'm like, this is my favorite mini I've ever printed. And now I'm just casually going through, throwing them into the trash, like it's nothing. If I had, maybe if I had more players or something, like in person, that I could easily give these to, I'd just give them to them instead. But at the moment, I'm just trying to really just streamline my workspace a bit, make that work for what I plan to do. I just spoke to, so my folks live next door, like my sister and my parents. I'm one of 6 siblings, so there's a lot of us. So I live next door to a fairly busy house. I'm actually right now, I'm just ripping the the rafts off of these nails. I don't know if anyone was paying attention before when I was showing you those fingernails I'm making. I'm just popping the rafts off, and they pop off like a dream. They're really, I do like rafts. My brother's talked about how he doesn't like rafts, but I like them a lot myself. And in fact, I should hit him up, see what he's up to today. I know he's a school teacher. He teaches like primary school kids and stuff. He runs like D&D for them in his classroom. They do a lot of arts and craftsy type stuff too, of course. But I think he teaches what like 8 or 9 year olds, something thereabouts. And he's got a group of about 30 of them that he DMs for. So like I'd love to even just get him on just to chat about what it's like to dungeon master for 30 kids. You know, obviously he doesn't have 30 at the table, but I think he's got some pretty big tables of about 8 kids per table, which if anyone's tried to run D&D for anyone with 8 people, that's a bit of a nightmare. Trying to run it for kids with 8 people, I never would have attempted it myself. But yeah, Luke's a really outgoing person. He's really cool, and I hope you guys get to meet him on stream. It's going to depend on his availability around teaching. I'm hoping that though during the school holidays here, if he doesn't have too much work, admin, prep and stuff to do, that hopefully he'll be able to he'll join us for some creative collabs. If you see these any fake nails I'm working on, that's largely because of discussions with him. And when you eventually see this UFO earring / UFO lamp / UFO necklace or whatever you want to make it, this one's a combination and a very focused collab with him. He's the one that came to me with the idea, and I said, hey, I'm so excited to explore this. Let's get started on it like right now. And I think that this is really cool. I also know that this one's got a bit of a deadline on it. He's got I think he's going to like a drag brunch or a drag show or something, or a drag party. Not quite sure exactly what. But supposedly the theme is out of this world, and so he wants some alien themed stuff or alien themed jewelry that he can paint and things, and prepare for that. So I think it's in 2 weeks' time. So I want to give him a solid week to paint and prepare his costume as needed. So I want to have the 3D prints for him for that. Yeah, probably in the next couple of days. And my prototype already works. It's just I need to make it into, I need to be able to build it to be smaller. At the moment it makes a nice little spinning top, but it's much more of like I guess a necklace type piece or something. And at the moment it's gonna hang poorly. It's just a bit too. We need to think about how it can dangle next to the ear and still have enough room for the ear. So what's kind of interesting is I need to make it smaller. They also need to make it very slightly taller if you want to be able to just insert the lights in easily without having to break apart the tea lights and like rework the system. So I'm deciding at the moment how I want to approach that. But that's just, I might talk about some of these projects as I clean them up. Yeah, I'm actually cleaning up a little bit of this AR sphere right now. I might as well put something more interesting on the screen too. So let's go. So here's the talons that I'm cleaning up. So I just threw a quick raft on them, and then they printed the no supports. And like, here we go. This is the Twitch stream that I'm going to be working on. Later today, I really want to keep going with this because I've made some big progress here. You can see that I need to kind of do a little bit of work on the, let's see, the left leg here. So probably where I'm working next. things that I'll be working on soon, but just to reiterate, I'm just doing some cleaning still, and the timeline of today is going to look a bit weird because, like I said, it's a day in the life. This isn't going to be a tutorial focused one. I'll probably obviously try and slow down at certain points and stuff to help out viewers, but for the most part, I'm just here to share what today's looking like for me as a, I guess, 3D modeler, 3D artist, just 3D generalist, I guess is probably the best way to describe me. I don't like to use the word generalist too much because everyone thinks, oh, you're a generalist, so you're not good at anything in particular. But honestly, generalist is the best way to refer to it when you've got skills from 10 different fields, or not 10 different fields, but maybe 10 different aspects of a field. It's pretty hard to call yourself anything except for a generalist unless you start to get into more than one word to describe yourself, or more than 5 words to describe yourself. So call me a 3D generalist, I guess, if you're referring to other people. But I hope that I can use a lot more than just I can be more than just what a lot of people consider a generalist too. I think I've got specialized knowledge in a lot of different fields that I draw together, and I'm a specialist in the general field of 3D now, I would say. There's so much aspects to the 3D sort of production side that I'm aware of, that maybe I'd do well, and I guess, like I'd like to think I'd do well in a management role or something like that. But I probably wouldn't do so well if you hired me just to be a sculptor, because you can see some of my sculpting won't be perfect, but I think I've got enough overall 3D skills to account for stuff like that. My sculpting has improved a lot in the last 6 months, but yeah, just like be aware that some stuff I'll be learning with, because like I said, I'm more of a generalist than I would say a specialist in some of the stuff that I share with you guys. And certainly like augmented reality stuff that I'll be manipulating with, some of that is stuff I'm learning on the go. So right now what I'm cleaning up is an augmented reality sphere for tabletop gaming. I'm calling it the tactile AR cube, or tactile AR sphere, and I think it's quite interesting. In fact, look, I can bring up, just to give you guys a picture of what I'm looking at. Some of you might be familiar with ZapWorks. AR stuff first. So I've 3D printed that in about maximum scale I can. Got a nice little glue on it. In theory, if I paint these things like black or a darker color, and then have the rest of it in a lighter color, then all of these should be scannable by a phone with the ZapWorks app, or the Zapar, and you should be able to see, I guess, what have we got? There should be the 6 little diamonds hovering above the space at the moment, because I haven't actually gone through and done a proper animation yet for the AR, but I just put in a space holding asset, a space filling asset, or a place holding asset, which is just a floating diamond that is still in grayscale. I didn't even add textures to it. I just want to test whether this AR stuff's working. So you might see some quite interesting prototyping around that stuff. And I hope you enjoy if you do get to see what I'm doing there. I'm looking at the one I've printed is solid, but I'm looking at printing some with transparency to them as well, and so that maybe we can still see the figures that are inside this cube at the same time. And so that's where I'm really looking to go with the mixed reality assets. But yeah, it's kind of it's very early stages with some of that stuff now, so that's much more of a watch this space for the next year and we'll see what happens. Whereas this sculpt I hope to be done with in the space of maybe a week or 2. Even though to some extent this is a more complicated project, and a very long-term sculpt, this one's only going to be really, I guess it's only going to be really useful if you want to print a satyr, right? If you want to print Pan the satyr, and he's going to have to be in a pose somewhat like this. I'm hoping to give some customization to you all. You can see I've already worked on multiple sets of horns for him. I'm planning on setting up maybe a quick GeoNodes sort of character creator type thing for this this particular minis, that maybe people can switch out either an item of clothing or two, or maybe a few body parts like the flute, say. And I'll probably keep them all relatively the same sizes or similar sizes, enough so that the GeoNode setup would work on the same model and still look good. But maybe there'll be a few things that you can alter to make it feel a bit more like your character, or like the model that you'd like to print and have it at your desk. There'll probably be a default one, which is probably the one I'm working on right now, is going to be the default, and the one that I'm building for my my friend. And I'll probably try and make that the base file, because that's going to be easiest for me to build off and make sure that he gets the highest quality mini, and then we've got one mini that's just as high quality as possible. But I'm looking to maybe do some setups with I guess your GeoNodes and instances, and instance on points nodes and stuff, mostly just to get pinpoint where the horns come from, switch out the horns for another horn asset. I don't plan on having the assets themselves be made in GeoNodes or anything like that, because there's not really a benefit in having that, aside from maybe a little bit of sensing / transforming for different, if I need them to fit into different sized objects, or if the scaling's going to be wrong or something like that. I might look into that, but my ideal will be a very simple GeoNode setup that allows you to just change out a few features, and it'll all go through to the group input. So you won't even have to actually touch the nodes themselves or any of those weird tangly strings. You're just going to have to go in and you literally click on the modifiers tab, and you should be able to just have a little bit of a character creator there in the modifiers tab, where you choose, horns option 1 through 10, or 1 through 4, or whatever it ends up being, and then you choose hooves options 1 through 3, and then you choose clothes options either A or B for a couple of different items, or maybe it's A or B or none, and it's A or B or none for the belt option, and then same with braces and so on. So you can have, I guess, this much more natural look of this top one here. It just looks like very much, or even the cow. The cow's nice and natural, but obviously I want to kind of have a scale of some that can be have about as much clothing as this character, and then some that have zero clothing like the top character. I might eventually come back and look at this again in terms of posing and stuff, because I can probably, I've told you, or some people that have watched this, that I've, done some destructive stuff here already, which is pretty standard for sculpting. You want to do a lot of destructive stuff in sculpting. But I'd love to have a posable asset that's a satyr or something sometime, right? That would be pretty cool, because then I could actually explore more of this augmented reality side and have him have a bit more motion in that. For the moment, I think if I explore the augmented reality side with this asset, one, he's going to look really cool just as a base model, but I'll probably look at giving him some good textures that go with him, and first making him an augmented reality still, or like a 3D model that just pops up that looks good in 3D space. And then if that's looking good in 3D space, I might look at adding some small animations to that model, like a kind of radiating aura around it or something, or like a magical sort of flute noise that comes out of it, or something like that. That doesn't involve me altering the mesh, but maybe involves me doing some additive stuff to the area surrounding the mesh and so on. I guess since we're talking about doing modular stuff, I wouldn't mind it as well if you could maybe choose between him sitting on a rock or sitting on a stump as well. So maybe I'll get 2 different base options that relatively fit him as well. So obviously a very long-term project, but I imagine that I'll have the first sculpt done in the space of a week or 2 weeks, so that you can start playing at our table with this mini. That should be pretty exciting. Honestly, I think everything I'm working on here is pretty exciting, but there's a lot of it that I'm just going to throw away now, because it's just taking up lots of sort of clutter space. I really want to just organize this all into a nice pile so that my wife can move through the space without being too concerned about breaking something of mine or hurting herself. noticed that it all evaporates, so that's quite cool too. So, like, I'm always looking for ways to incorporate other things I do or other hobbies I have with my 3D space. So, if I can think of any ways that'll include like these. So maybe if one of my products needs cleaning or something on the inside or maintenance, maybe I'll be looking at that, or maybe I'll be looking at 3D modeling some stuff that might help people with their little vapes or whatever, like some little vape packers or grinder type stuff. I know people make 3D prints of grinders, and my grinder is running a bit. It's getting a bit worn down, so I can either sharpen it, buy a new one, or I could 3D print one. So I might 3D print one because that could be fun. Yeah, look, I'm just clearing up this. I don't know if people have seen a Wild Pidgey Appears one that I printed. It's just a little Pokemon tile. I loved playing the old school Pokemon games back in the day. I used to play. I used to have a copy of Pokemon Red on the black and white Game Boy. So I guess that makes me sound really old. I'm actually about 29, almost 30, which I guess for some people might be really old. Some people might be really young, but I mostly kind of followed with my older siblings' generation because I'm the fourth child out of 6 siblings. So all my older siblings had Game Boys, and I used to do a lot of like hand-me-downs of their toys or whatever and that sort of stuff. Or like I get given something when they were done with it, which is pretty cool, honestly. Having so many siblings, you end up with a lot of kind of free crap at different points, and I'm still kind of benefiting from that now. My younger sister's getting rid of a bunch of these clothes, and she wants to give them to my wife. So like this hand-me-down kind of nature we do to some of the stuff is really helpful. But yeah, like I've cleaned up that Wild Pidgey, which is from just a screen grab from a Game Boy Pocket, I guess, or a Game Boy Color running something in black and white. You can see that tile free on my Colts. In terms of at computer time, I spent making this tile. I spent about 2 minutes making this tile. I've got an automated 2.5D, 2D art, 2.5D art generator thing, which works for black and white images, basically, or black and white images with enough definitions. So I'm always open to requests for that stuff. That stuff will take me 2 seconds to throw together. So anyone's welcome to send me something like that. So look, there's the meshed one. But I want the Pika stamps. This is what it looks like, and this is what I'm cleaning up here. This is the
Haha, yes! Now we can create better virtual worlds, movies, avatars for video conferencing, you name it. Haha, yes! Now we can create better virtual worlds, movies, avatars for video conferencing, you name it. Why? Because the new version of Blender, the popular 3D modeling program 4.0, is now here. And it can now do so much more. And you will see today that it is 1. Completely free for all of us, and 2. Over the years, it has become an absolute powerhouse. Dear fellow scholars, this is 2-minute papers with Dr. Károly Zsolnai Fehér. Well, first, have a look at the quality of movies that you can create with this system. These are eye-poppingly beautiful scenes, all done with a free tool available right now for all of us. What a time to be alive! So, what's new? Well, first, it now has smarter geometry nodes. What is that? Well, these enable us to create new 3D objects where we don't really sculpt them, but instead build them with logical patterns, if you will. Now, geometry nodes have existed in Blender before, but now they are smarter and can create more interesting patterns. And now they can become incredibly detailed. Now, get this, the crevices of this surface are created from random numbers. All this beautiful stuff is built up from noise. You have to try it, it's real good. Also, a better system for managing the bones of these virtual characters is now available, and thus we can create more realistic and natural deformations for these characters. They also added a better principled BSDF model. This is a mega material model, if you will, where we can create diffuse surfaces, metals, translucent objects, light refraction, and whatever you can possibly wish for. The new version is now more physically accurate, and there was a velvet material that is now so much more useful. It has been renamed to Sheen, but that's not the point. The point is that you can now use this beautiful microfiber shading model and assign it to an object that is not a piece of cloth, but a digital camera instead, and model how tiny pieces of dust sit on the object. Does that make a huge difference? Oh boy, look at the difference! Loving it! And just think about it. A free tool enables you to model virtual 3D objects down to the level of specks of dust and make them come to life. This Sheen node can create a huge variety of objects. Look at how sterile this looks, and now how much clothier it is as light gets scattered more around the edges of the object. So good, so tasty. Also, you can now add a nice layer of coat to your materials, creating an even more realistic scene. And it gets better. There is a new hair shading model, which takes a bit longer, you can see from the noise here, but it is way better than the previous one. It is definitely worth waiting a bit more for this new one to finish. And now, one of my favorites, light linking. We have a scene here where the lighting is chef's kiss. But there is a problem. What is the problem? Unfortunately, that light creates a strong specular reflection in the eyes here. We want that gone. However, if we disable that light source, the entire effect of that light is gone. We don't want that. And thus, Blender 4.0 now supports adjusting which lights should influence which objects. That is huge. You see, to be able to create your artistic vision, sometimes physics is in the way. Sometimes you need to make decisions that are impossible in physics, for instance, asking a light source to not have an effect on a set of objects. And now we can choose which objects should cast shadows and from which lights, or if they should be receiving light at all. This is now possible. So, why is this huge? There is one more reason. You see, approximately 750 episodes ago, we talked about an incredible light transport simulation technique where we could do the impossible, and that is to bend the laws of physics. Yes, you could recreate these incredible photorealistic simulations and pretend as if physics worked differently to serve your artistic vision better. This is literally bending physics to your will. So good. These beautiful refracted caustic patterns, which are not only everyone's favorite, but with this paper they could be reorganized so much so that they can even form an object on the wall that you wish. And hold on to your papers, fellow scholars, because it even worked for animation. Whew. If you are one of the OG fellow scholars who was around at this episode, I tip my papers to you. Make sure to leave a comment. And today, some of these concepts are making their way into products that all of us can use for free. I love to see it. Obviously, this is not as advanced as this paper was, but steps are being taken in this direction, and who knows, perhaps one day this paper will end up in Blender too. I'd love to see that. But we are not done yet. Not even close. Glossy surfaces are also now rendered more realistically. My favorite here is this part. Once again, the papers coming alive in the hands of millions and millions of users all around the world. So cool. Color profiles have also been improved. Standard used to be the default one, and then Filmic came, which supported a much higher dynamic range. Look, bright areas became much more natural, less blown out. And now, even Filmic has been replaced by a new color profile called AGX, which looks a bit more natural. A bit more like what a real high-end camera would create. And there is so much more. It is an unbelievable release, and don't forget, all this is free for all of us forever. You can download it and play with it right now. It is one of the best open source projects ever. The link to it is available in the video description, and don't forget, it has a bunch of demo showcase files so you don't have to start from a small cube and create everything from scratch. Look, there is so much to explore. I will also recommend that you check out BlendSwap for more free project files, and, of course, my friend Andrew Price, the king of donuts, also known as Blender Guru. He has legendary tutorials on how to make the tastiest donut the world has ever seen. It is aimed at complete beginners and is now updated to Blender 4.0. As fresh as it gets. Check it out. Experiment tracking, model evaluation, and production monitoring for your deep learning projects and LLM apps. This is what Weights and Biases does, and it is the best. Everyone is using it. Try it out now at wnb.me/papers or click the link in the description below.
Hi. Originally I decided not to make a video about the release of Blender 4.1. Last month I took a look at the release notes, and frankly it was about as interesting to me as one of those Hallmark Christmas movies. However, for the last 2 weeks I've been using the beta version of 4.1, and I've noticed 4 or 5 changes and new features that I think definitely need to be discussed, so I've decided to make the video. Although, you know that because this is that video. So anyway, let's just jump into Blender and take a look at some of these changes. So this first feature is going to get a lot of people excited if they use geometry nodes. If you do use geometry nodes and you use very complex setups, you'll probably know that by the time you get to the last nodes in the tree, often the changes you make are very sluggish. And the reason for that is because every single node in the tree has to be calculated for every change that's made. Blender doesn't know if you've made a change here until it recalculates everything. Now that's obviously very inefficient. What would be nice if we could tell Blender, all of this stuff here, I haven't changed, right? Just make the changes from this point onwards. And we can do that now. We have this new node called Bake. And if we save the project, because everything in the Bake gets saved to the blend file itself, we can hit bake over here. We can make our changes, and if this was a complex setup, this would now be faster. And you'll see here, if I change this number to like 50, nothing happens because Blender is not trying to calculate any of these nodes. Of course, if we did want these nodes to be calculated, all we'd have to do is get rid of the bake, and we can make changes back over here again. Now, the cool thing about this is it works with animations as well. So you could, for instance, do a physics animation using the simulation nodes, and then you could make changes to those meshes after the simulation, and you wouldn't have to calculate the simulation all over again because it would be baked down. I've wanted a node that does this in the material nodes for years, so I'm hoping and praying that we get this in the shader editor eventually, but for now this is a very cool and a really slick implementation that's also very, very fast. Now, I don't want to sound too cynical, but this next feature is one of those things that Blender probably should have been able to do 15 years ago, but I'm not going to complain because it finally can. We can drag and drop objects straight from the operating system into the viewport. If I just drop this onto here and click import, because I don't need to change any of these settings, we bring our monkey head object into the scene. Hallelujah. Well done to whoever implemented this. This is great. Like, it doesn't, apparently at the moment, it doesn't support any of the importers that were made with Python. So it doesn't support FBX at the moment, and it doesn't support Glyphy, the one I use all the time, GLTF 2.0, terrible name. It doesn't support that, but it does do SVG, it does STL, it does Alembic, it does OpenUSD, and eventually I'm told it is going to support all the other types as well. Well done, big well done to whoever's implemented this. It was sorely needed. No longer are we ever going to have to go like file, import, remember exactly what type of file you've just downloaded. You can just drag it in. The next thing I want to talk about isn't really a feature, it's more correcting a mistake that was made in the last version of Blender. You see, in Blender 4, if you have a point light like this and you think the shadows are too sharp, you can increase the radius and you get smoother shadows. The problem is, if you have any objects that interact with this circle, Blender basically treats these objects like they are inside a light source, and everything gets blown out and it looks completely nasty. And this is now being fixed because there's a soft fallout option. If we turn this on, Blender will basically work the way it always used to work before Blender 4. Now we have a nice smooth light transition, and it's no longer acting like the monkey head is inside the light. Now this is going to be turned on automatically every time you add a light source in Blender. Also, if you open up a project that was made before Blender 4 in 4.1, this is going to be turned on for all your light sources. So if you have a project from, like, say, Blender 4 and you want this horrible nasty look for whatever reason, you're going to have to go through your point light and you're going to have to turn this off. Just something to be aware of, but because it's kind of a breaking change, I thought it was worth mentioning. If you're anything like me, then you might use the Musgrave node all the time when you're making materials. I constantly use it to add imperfections and bits of extra detail when I'm making materials, but pour one out for the Musgrave node because it's died, or at least it's been made redundant. So all of the things that the Musgrave node used to do have effectively been taken over by a new, better version of the noise texture. If we load this noise texture in here, you can see that it looks exactly like a regular noise texture would, but if we turn off this normalized toggle, then now it looks like Musgrave, and it can do all of the things that Musgrave normally does. We have all of the same settings that we have here for like multifractal and things like that. And the cool thing about this is, if you open up an older version of Blender that does have Musgrave nodes in it, Blender will automatically set it up with the correct settings so it looks exactly the same, as far as I understand it anyway. So that's another one of those things that might put people off if they open up 4.1 and can't find Musgrave. This is why you can't find it. It's now the noise texture. Blender comes with two different denoising options. There's the optics denoiser from NVIDIA and there's open, or the open image denoiser from Intel. Now, a lot of people prefer the open image denoiser because they think it gets better results, but the problem that it's always had is it's CPU based, which means that it's very slow. If I try to move around the scene here, you can see that it's very jittery, and it's slow to the point where by default in the viewport Blender uses optics. but not anymore, because we now have this option which will be turned on by default for use GPU, and it's now GPU accelerated. And you can see the difference here. If I move around, it's really fast, and it does an absolutely incredible job of cleaning up the noise and doing it quickly. So for a scene like this, it comes in absolutely perfect. The only time you might want to turn this off is if you have a GPU that has very low VRAM, or you have a scene that takes up a massive amount of GPU usage. Then you might have to toggle that off, but otherwise it's something that you're going to want to turn on if you're using it in the viewport and in your final renders. Now, I've done a test on this scene, and it was saving 5 to 10% on every render just for not having to calculate on the CPU all the denoising for every frame. The Blender scene that you're looking at right now is the result of my new course, the Interior Masterclass. Over the course of about 7.5 hours, I go through from start to finish and show you my exact process for making this lovely, realistic interior scene. This isn't a follow-along tutorial where I expect you to actually do what I've done to get the same result. It's more of a workflow tutorial where you can see all of the different tips, tricks and techniques that I use to actually build realistic interior spaces just like this. We start off with obviously the basic things like building the walls and the furniture, but we get really into the nitty-gritty of stuff as well for extra realism. So by the end, we're adding stuff like steam and stains on the inside of coffee cups. The course also comes with this huge pack of assets that are really handy if you regularly make interior scenes. We have lots of different options for light bulbs, there's door handles, there's switches, all of the sorts of things that you constantly have to model if you work on interior spaces. There'll be a link in the description where you can find out more about the course. I would highly recommend that you check it out if you're interested in interior modeling or increasing your Blender skills in general. So that just about does it for Blender 4.1. If you found anything in this video helpful, I'd appreciate it if you could slap a like on this video, and if you're not subscribed, hitting the subscribe button couldn't harm either. I'll see you guys around in a couple of days. Until then, take care.
I've been using Blender for the past 4 years. In that time, I created a bunch of renders, earned some money, found a hobby, and started this YouTube channel because I wanted to share the knowledge that I got throughout this time. Here are my secrets that will help you get better at Blender faster. Photo recreation. Let me explain. It demands an insane amount of attention to detail, takes you through the whole process of creating a scene, teaches you texturing, adding imperfections, and arguably one of the most important details about 3D, lighting. More on that later. Also, make sure you don't get stuck in a loop of constantly following tutorials. Following tutorials will only take you so far. It's okay to do it at the start, but try to do it less and less once you get the general understanding of Blender. Try to make your own stuff. After all, this is what you are learning it for. Now let's talk about lighting. This is the difference that lighting can make to your renders. The lighting to the left looks boring. It doesn't tell us anything about the character, whilst the lighting on the right gives us the idea that this guy may be evil and is trying to hide something from us. Lighting is a way to tell a story. Another way to use lighting to our advantage is to use something called gobos. But what is a gobo? Gobo is just a black and white image texture that you use on your lights to create interesting shadows. It's a way to make your renders feel bigger and more alive. This is how you add gobos to your scene. Just add in a spotlight, make sure your rendering engine is set to cycles, and go to the shading tab. Now, go to the Light Properties tab and click the Use Nodes button. Add in an image texture and bump up the strength. Play around with the light settings until you find something you like. Now let's talk about materials. If you are going for realism, make sure you choose PBR or real-life image textures for your materials. Here is a quick and easy material setup using 2 image textures that looks extremely realistic. And lastly, just enjoy yourself.
In this video, I'll reveal 5 Blender tips that will transform your experience with this software forever. Tips I wish I had known when I started. The information I'll share with you will not only transform your workflow, but also save you valuable time on every project you undertake. Get your mind ready for this because we're starting. This tip is quite simple but very important, and if you're still new in Blender, you've probably already experienced some headaches for not applying it. It's very common when modeling to make changes to the mesh both in edit mode and in object mode. As you can see in these two cubes here, I've scaled both of them 3 times along the x-axis, but one of them I've scaled in edit mode and the other in object mode. Apparently, we've achieved the same result. And that's true, so you're probably wondering what the problem is here. Well, when making changes to our mesh in object mode, we'll be modifying its properties, whereas when we do it in edit mode, we're only making changes to the mesh, leaving the object's properties intact, except for the object's dimensions, which are modified in both cases. This particularity will lead to future inconveniences if we don't apply the properties we've modified. For example, when modeling, as you're seeing here, when performing an inset, it's generated disproportionately in the object where we haven't applied the transformations. Or when unwrapping our object, the UV map generated in the object where we haven't applied the transformations doesn't correctly reflect the mesh, so we'll encounter problems when texturing. There are many other examples like these. So always remember to check your object's properties in the In panel and apply the transformations you've made by pressing Command A or Control A and selecting the property you modified. If you're not sure which property you modified, you can choose the option All Transforms. Checking the orientation of your object's normals is extremely important. This will prevent you from encountering many shading problems in your model that will be visible in your final render if you don't correct them. So let's see how to do it. In Edit mode, we'll go to the Viewport Overlays menu and activate the Face Orientation option. Now, the faces of your object will be either red or blue. The blue color indicates that the face is oriented correctly, while the red color indicates that the normal of that face is pointing inward. To correct this, we'll select our entire object by pressing the A key, and then press Shift-In to recalculate all the normals of our object outward. With this, your object will be ready to start shading. If you often use PBR textures, this tip will save you a lot of time. When we download these textures, it can be a hassle to add and organize each part in the node editor. Not to mention, the different ways texture files are named can be confusing. The solution to all these problems is Node Wrangler. This add-on, which is actually already included with Blender, adds many new and great features to the node editor. One of these features lets us automatically add a PBR texture with just a couple of clicks. Simply press Ctrl-Shift-T with the principled BSDF node selected, then open your texture folder, select all the images, and voila! The texture will be added and ready to bring your object to life. This feature is simply amazing, so remember to activate the Node Wrangler add-on in the Preferences menu. Lighting is crucial when it comes to rendering, and it varies depending on what you want to convey. But if you're looking for realistic lighting, the best thing you can do is use HDRI images. This type of lighting yields fantastic results and is very simple to implement. Just head to the Shading workspace, switch the node editor to World, and add an environment texture. Select the HDRI you downloaded. Now, connect it to the background node, and you're all set. You now have lighting that looks professional and very realistic. You can add a texture coordinate node and a mapping for more control over your lighting. You can also adjust the strength of the HDRI from the background node. One of the best features of this type of lighting is that you can download an HDRI image tailored to your needs, whether it's for interior or exterior lighting, among other options. I'll leave direct links to the websites where I download my HDRI images in the description below. This tip is especially handy when modeling. Let's see why. Okay, here I have this tree that I'm modeling in a low poly style, and I want to adjust these leaves a bit. I want this leaf to be a bit higher up. Well, instead of moving this vertex with the G key and trying to calculate a position where this vertex looks good, let's press the G key twice. This way, we'll be able to move this vertex along the edges to which it's connected. As we move the mouse, it indicates which of these 3 edges we're going to move the vertex along, highlighting the edge in yellow where we'll make the movement, and if we continue moving the mouse, it will move along it. But that's not all. Now I want, for example, to make this leaf go down further. Well, if we press double G and move the mouse, it only allows us to move from the selected vertex to the next vertex that forms an edge, as we saw earlier. But if we press the Option or Alt key, we can project the movement path of our vertex and move it beyond its limits. This option has greatly improved my modeling times, so I hope you use it wisely. And there you have it, 5 valuable tips to master Blender like a pro. I hope these tips will be helpful for your upcoming projects. Remember, Blender's magic is accessible to everyone, and everyone can become true 3D artists. If you enjoyed today's content and want to continue exploring the world of animation and 3D modeling, I invite you to join our community by subscribing to the channel. Thank you for watching this video, and see you next time.
Hello everyone, my name is Aerospace Simon and I've been learning Blender for the past year. I'm nowhere near a professional level, but I'd say I've learned my fair share about Blender. So I'm here today to teach you 10 things I wish I knew sooner. Let's start off with one of the things that took me way too long to realize. Do not make everything out of one single mesh. It's totally okay if your final object is made out of multiple meshes that are not connected. In most situations, using a separate object and joining the objects together afterwards looks better and saves you a lot of headache. Just remember to optimize the model and the UV space afterwards by deleting faces you can't see on the final render. Tip number 2. Learning shortcuts. Shortcuts are super important for fast and efficient Blender workflow, so knowing how to use them is trivial to speeding up your work. Blender has so many shortcuts and so many keybinds to learn, it may be hard to remember them all after only using them once. So that brings me to my next tip, which is my learning method. When it comes to learning shortcuts, I use reinforcement learning. This method helped me learning shortcuts quite efficiently. It may not work for anyone, but it's worth a try anyway. Every time you have to go into a menu to do something, remember the hotkey. You can see it by pressing F3, writing in the operation you want to perform, and you can see it right here. Every time you have to look up the hotkey, repeat it 10 times. So do it, undo, do it again, undo, do it another time, undo, and that 10 times. Every time you have to look it up again, you do it another 10 times. So in my experience, after doing that 2 or 3 times, you will have mesmerized the shortcut. My next tip is about variation. Variation through randomization. Oftentimes you finish the model, you look at it, and it just doesn't look right. It's missing something. And in my experience, oftentimes the answer is variation and randomization is missing. Things in the real world are never perfect, so let that reflect in your model too. Put in a little dent here. Make this part of the fence just a tiny bit bigger than the last one. Put cigarettes just slightly apart from each other in height. It will end up looking so much better and your scene or model will be more convincing. Tip number 5 is about thinking around corners. So there are multiple ways to do certain things, and sometimes the most obvious way isn't the most efficient way. So it's a good thing to get familiar with Blender's select options and other support options to think around corners. So for example, in this mesh I want to give the bevels another color. So it's tedious to go in here and try to select the bevels only. Instead, I can just select all the other bigger faces that aren't the bevels and simply invert my selection. This is way faster and saved me quite a bit of frustration and tedious work. So this is only a really simple example of this rule, but there are so many situations in Blender where you will work way more efficient by thinking around corners and not doing the most obvious thing. Tip number 6 is to dial in your render settings. So it's easy enough to just not care about render settings at all and then cry and suffer while Blender takes 42 hours to render a single picture. Dialing in your render settings is one of the biggest time savers you can use. So Inform yourself how you can change them in order to save time, and then dial them in for each project. Because each project needs other render settings, it all depends on what kind of scene you're trying to render. One tip I can give you though is that Blender automatically sets the samples to 4092, which is way too high for most renders. You can usually get away with using 500 or less samples and a denoiser for a still picture. Are you tired of opening Blender and seeing that damn default cube sitting there, having to delete it every time? Make a custom startup file. Personally, I've replaced the cube with a human mesh, because that's something I almost always import for a good size reference. You can get it on the Blender website. The startup file also includes your workspaces and your window configuration, so each time you open up Blender, you don't have to do all that stuff over again. In order to save a startup file, set up your workspace how you want it, spawn the objects you want to have when you open Blender, go to File, Defaults, and Save Startup File. There we go. Number 8. Add-ons and their time-saving ability. Add-ons. There are thousands of add-ons for Blender, some free and some paid. Some of them can help you speed up your workflow immensely. Some of my most used add-ons include Hardops, Box Cutter, Cable Rater, and Random Flow, but I also use a lot of other add-ons depending on the kind of work I'm doing. One thing I want to remind you of though is that most of the things you can do with those add-ons you can also do in vanilla Blender, so you don't have to get them in order to make something. But it's really helpful because those add-ons are usually designed to help you work more efficient. The only downside is they can cost quite a bit sometimes, which brings me straight to my next tip. Number 9. Blender Kit. Earn money for your practice models. Blender Kit, another add-on. If you haven't got it yet, definitely get it. You can download thousands of free materials and models, and you are free to use them in your project. But even better, you can upload models. So, if you worked on a practice model and you think it looks quite nice, instead of just letting it collect dust on your hard drive, upload it and start earning money. Of course, it's not a lot, but it can help you pay for some add-ons, especially if you're a beginner. I myself uploaded quite a few models to Blender Kit, and as you can see here, it helped me pay for 1 or 2 great add-ons. My final piece of advice is to never get discouraged. 3D modeling can be a super tough topic to learn, and especially to master. So it's normal you're going to feel burned out at some point. It's normal you're spending hours on something you may just throw away and not use in the end. In those situations it's easy and normal to get discouraged and frustrated, but I think it's important you don't stop because of that. Take a break, play some games, take a walk, whatever makes you happy, and then come back to your model and do it all over again, do it properly, avoid the mistakes you made last time, and just keep going. I also think one of the hardest things is finding the motivation to start modeling, because once you've invested 2 or 3 hours into a model, you will want to finish it. But the hard part is starting in the first place. So next time you're bored, thinking, what should I play now? I don't know what to do. Just start up Blender and start modeling. Think of something you like, model it. Just start. Right now. Do it. Let's go. The video is done. No excuses anymore. Go. Start Blender. Do it. Right now.
So I've been part of this Blender world for around 7 to 8 years at this point, and for the first 6 years or so of that journey, trust me when I say this, the renders I was making were always below par, always lacking in some aspect or the other. You take one look at them and say this could not be made by someone with 6 years of experience. And I would agree with you. But for the last 2 years, I feel like something has changed. Something that has caused a clear jump in the quality of work that I'm producing. I mean, it's still not world class, it's still not top 1% or whatever by any means, but it's definitely better than the level I was stuck on for 6 years. Changes that have led to the making of my first ever short animated film, and several other short animated projects as well in just a matter of months. So what changed, you might ask? What caused this spike in quality all of a sudden? Well, that's what this video is all about. It's about these 6 things that I changed in my workflow, 6 things that I would do differently if I were to learn Blender all over again. So yeah, let's begin. By the way, this video is sponsored by Squarespace, but we'll talk more about them later in the video. For now, let's cover the first mistake I made as a beginner. The mistake that got me stuck at that same beginner/intermediate level for almost 6 odd years. The mistake being spending 80% of my time watching Blender tutorials and only 20% of my time actually making something in Blender. It's a weird thing our minds do. We think if we just watch Andrew Price making a cabin in the woods, or just watch Ducky making sleek looking motion graphics, or watch Polyfjord making awesome mechanical creatures, we somehow assume that we can make them too now. We have absorbed all the necessary information from that video and are just ready to make anything along those lines. But then you get to Blender and you start the whole project and you very soon realize you have collected absolutely zero skills from the video alone, because you never really did anything. You never really opened up Blender. It's like you're watching a friend finish Elden Rings or something, and all you did was just sit by him and do nothing, but claim that you've played the game from start till end. That obviously does not sit right. And guess what? This was my biggest mistake as a beginner, and even as an intermediate artist later on. I don't know how I didn't grasp this idea of putting pen to paper at some point for such a long time, and to do it consistently, day after day, to see any kind of progress at all in these early stages. So if you're also stuck on a tutorial loop like I was for several years, all you gotta do is flip those numbers up a little bit. Spend at least 60 to 70% of your time actually making something in Blender, rather than just watching tutorials after tutorials. No matter how bad it looks, no matter if you are just copying a tutorial step by step, you just do it within Blender rather than just watching the video, and do it consistently for maybe 6 months or so at a stretch, and tell me if you don't see some crazy improvement in your 3D skills. Tutorials are great and an integral part in every beginner's journey, but we have to make sure that we don't get into the habit of just watching them stagnantly and not really make anything within Blender. But this was just the beginning. Because if you get on this path of actually starting to make some scenes within Blender, you're soon bound to hit that second biggest problem most 3D artists face at this level, which is impatience. Impatience to get to the highest level in Blender in as short of a timeline as possible. Impatience to make tons and tons of money with Blender with merely weeks of effort put into the software and the skill set. I'm gonna let you know right away, Blender isn't one of those instant gratification kind of skills like some of these new AI tools are. This journey with Blender is gonna be extremely long and excruciatingly slow, with usually extraordinarily little gratification along the way. So if you are here and you are here to learn this tool to the best of its abilities, you should be here for the long run. That bridge between what you imagine your render will be to what it actually ends up being will only be reduced with effort and experience and nothing else. So getting tired of not seeing any significant results and not seeing any progress in your renders is part of the journey. And as demotivating and pessimistic it all sounds, it's just the harsh truth. So dump that instant gratification expectation as soon as you can if you want to grow here. But hey, these were just mistakes I made as a beginner. My real struggle began when I hit the intermediate level, where you're comfortable enough with Blender, you know where all the buttons are, you know what all the nodes do, and you know what the strengths and weaknesses are of the tool, but you still suck. You still make mediocre things. You still are far, far away from where you really want to be. And that's a sucky place to be, where you know all the ins and outs of the tool, but you're still not good enough. So let's talk about some things that helped me get through this intermediate stage in my Blender journey. But before we do that, let me tell you a little bit about today's sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace have been at the top of their game in the website making business for several years now, and for good reason. With their state-of-the-art fluid engine and countless niche-specific website templates, and easy-to-use user interface and highly customizable controls for literally everything you see and add to your website. Squarespace is a no-brainer if you're looking to make a website for your business or portfolio or even a personal blog. So head on to squarespace.com and try it all out for free, and whenever you're ready to launch your website, go to squarespace.com/stash to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. So yeah, go check them out before the deal runs out. Alright, let's continue. Let's cover the first tip that helped me grow as an intermediate artist. And it's a tip you've already heard 1,000 times and you think you've got the hang of it. But I don't think you do. Neither of us really do, actually. And I'm obviously talking about reference images. Now I know what you're thinking. You think you're some hotshot with a PureRef board with tons and tons of reference images. You don't need to hear this tip, but you do. Okay, trust me when I say this, I had those same PureRef boards that you do now. I had plenty of reference images up there, 10, 20, 50, you name it. But those numbers do nothing because it doesn't matter how many reference images you have if you don't know what to do with them and how to use them. I used to think reference images are just for modeling, so you could have a bunch of different angles and a bunch of different design choices for whatever you wanted to make. But the more I look at these expert artists' reference boards, the more I realize how far I am from them in my planning stage of a render. These guys have a reference board for literally everything: the lighting, the textures, the composition, the story, the sound design, the color grading, literally every minuscule detail you can think of. And it's not even per project. More often than not, most of these artists have a master reference board that they come back to from time to time for inspiration. So that's what I've been doing too for the past 6 months or so. And I think it has helped me level up my 3D game like nothing else, because I also now maintain a Notion board for literally everything: lighting, materials, colors, composition, even poster design and thumbnail design. And not just that, I even save some of my favorite YouTube tutorials on there, tutorials that have taught me something new or a new way to do an old thing, just to keep a record of important tips and tricks that could come in handy in future projects. Basically, what I'm saying is, you might think you've got the hang of this reference image thing, so did I for the longest time, but trust me when I say this, both you and I need to level up our reference game if you want to get anywhere in this 3D world. Alright, let's talk about another tip that got me going in my intermediate stage, which was finally understanding that free stuff can only get you so far. And to explain that, let me preface it first by saying that I am Indian, and I think anybody watching from India would wholeheartedly agree that we hate spending money. We hate spending money on anything we don't absolutely need. But hey, obviously it's not just us Indians. It doesn't really matter where you're from. I think this is just a mindset thing. And please know that I'm not talking about college students or people from really poor backgrounds or impoverished economies. I'm talking to people who can spend the money but still choose not to. It is sometimes just a pride and a delusion thing where you just think you don't need a paid asset because you can do everything yourself, or it's somehow beneath you to use other people's assets. Sometimes it's just habit. Getting too comfortable in the free world, especially in the Blender space where so many good plugins and assets are available for absolutely free of charge, you feel like it's unnecessary to take the paid asset route. But trust me when I say this, my skill set literally skyrocketed when I subscribed to my favorite artist's Patreon and bought some important paid add-ons and watched a bunch of paid courses and started buying good looking 3D models. This is when I really saw some crazy improvement in my craft and my skills. So all I'm trying to say in this tip is try and get out of this horrible habit of always taking the free route for whatever reason. Free can only get you so far. And that's just the truth. And to the people who cannot afford them, I understand what you're going through. I was once in that same exact situation as you are, where buying even a $1 add-on seemed like an extravagant purchase. And most of these CG sites and add-on sellers don't practice purchasing power parity. They just set up a USD price value and don't understand that a $50 course or a $50 add-on is just absurd in countries outside of North America or Europe. So I understand how you feel, but there's nothing much we can do about it other than just persisting with our craft and making do with what we have and just powering our way through all of these problems bit by bit, and maybe slowly and steadily we get some kind of financial stability in the future so we can afford our wishlisted plugins and assets in the future. But just promise me, if and when you get there, you don't hesitate to spend the money out of habit or pride like a lot of people do. This is an investment you're making towards your craft, so there should be no dilemma about it in your head. But hey, while we are on this topic of expanding our skill sets through paid add-ons, another tip along the same line that has helped me grow in the past year or so is not limiting myself to always rely on Blender for everything. I think this is the biggest, most toxic trait of the whole Blender community right now. We love this software so much that we are not even ready to give any of the other competitors even a try. But the truth of the matter is, Blender, although great at a lot of things, is obviously not the holy grail of all 3D softwares. It still lacks a lot of fundamental features. People prefer Marvel